Namaste. Welcome to our 40th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna has been talking about various kinds of people that sort of trip themselves up in spiritual life or in the living of life, and that they are, in a sense, truly their own worst enemies. All right. But now we're going to get into better, more inspiring words. Among the virtuous, and of course that has got to be. I can really recommend this. This is the Bhagavad Gita by Winthrop Sargent, and you see it has the English and the Sanskrit translation, and then you see word by word, you have each Sanskrit term that's used and a definition of it. All right, therefore, what word is called virtuous? The word is sukranito, and it means the people who do good. That's interesting. So, in other words, the people who don't do good, they don't even come in to, they're not, we could say, on Krishna's radar. So, we better be sukrino then. Among the virtuous, 4 kinds seek me: the distressed, the seekers of knowledge, the seekers of wealth, and the wise. That sequence interests me, but all right. First, the distressed, those who are in trouble. They see the world as awful. You know, I remember one time in the midst of a particular era where, I mean, the suffering and the warring and so on that was going on were really sad. And even then, our mental institutions are filled, people are committing suicide, et cetera, et cetera. And so there was a small group of people and talking about philosophical and spiritual things. And one of them was rather dull, and he said, "My life is good." Mostly because nothing was going on in it, so there was nothing to bother him. But an intelligent person who may be healthy, may have all they need, and have a tranquil personal life ordered should be aware and care about all the grief and sorrow that is in the world. So, the distressed, those that say, I've got to get out of this, I have got to, but see, they're virtuous, and because they're virtuous, they know God is the answer. They don't say, oh, everything is miserable for me, well, I just need a divorce, or everything is miserable for me, I need to get another job. No. The wise say, I know I've got to go higher in my evolution and in my consciousness, and then in my ability to direct my life. So there are the distressed, the seekers of knowledge. Those who say, well, look at the world around me. I can't figure anything out. What's life for? Why does all this go on? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? They want knowledge, jnana. They want to understand. This is right and good. The seekers of wealth, in other words, they want things. God is the source of all abundance. And therefore, the more attention I give to God or to higher life, higher thought, then, I mean, science and health is just do what you ought to do in relation to God and you'll get well. Not that it doesn't have wisdom in the book. Please don't think I'm criticizing it. Not. But the application that people put when they see the book or read the book, yes, that does lack some jnana, some wisdom. But they believe that then God is abundant and God will give me everything abundantly. And don't think that the televangelists and the Christians are the only one that do it. Everybody does it. I've known Buddhists that do it, and I certainly have known Hindus that do it. That please God and you'll get what you want. And because God is smarter than you, well, you'll end up with more than you even know you ought to want. All right? And then the wise, the real wise, not just knowledge, but wisdom. There was maybe some of you who are old enough to remember the 12-year-old guru during the yoga boom. We suddenly started hearing about the 12-year-old guru from India. 12, imagine. Now, who but the most superficial person would give a care about how old a guru was if they had wisdom? But this was peddling, and it was peddling, had to be to a big audience to make the money, and people in generally aren't particularly using their inner intelligence. That's a nice way to put it, isn't it? So, the 12-year-old guru. I mean, people say to me, have you heard of the 12-year-old guru? Well, first of all, guess what? He was 27 years old. But he came from what we call a hill tribe, kind of indigenous people uh, in the Himalayan foothills, actually, not far beyond Rishikesh. And you see, Swami Shivananda, founder of Divine Life Society there, uh, was a medical man and he was interested in alleviating suffering. And several of his disciples living in the ashram were also MDs. And they used to go to outlying areas and provide free medical care for the people. Well, one of his disciples, Swami Shivananda Hridayananda, whom we all call Dr. Mother, uh, knew him well because she had often gone there to the village where his family lived and had even treated him and therefore knew he was 27 years old. But she said the entire group of people there have a hereditary defect, perhaps not for materialistic minded people, that they never show their age. Even until when they're quite can be quite old, they look young. Now, in our body worshiping society, we think, what a great idea. But it isn't when it's a lack, when it's a deficiency. And so she said, yes, he looks like he's 12, but he's really 27. I remember uh, meeting a man who worked for the Raja of Chandod. This is in Western India. And he worked in his household. And I don't know how the subject of age came up, and maybe the 12-year-old uh, unguru came up, but the Raja called for this worker and said, how old is he? There were about six of us. And we all looked and we all agreed he was 14. And he was actually 43 years old and had three children because he too had this particular genetic makeup. So, anyway, uh, uh, there was this hurry burry, and the truth is, he did not know anything about yoga. His father decided to set himself up as a guru. Now, I know this all from a friend of mine who was one of the best yogis I ever met. And he lived in central India, in Aligarh. And his grandfather was a very renowned yogi, a married man with a family, obviously, but he was very well known as a yogi. And one day, to his amazement, a man showed up and said, well, I'm from Rishikesh, or north of Rishikesh, and My guru wants to come and spend a week with you and learn yoga and how to teach it to others and be a guru. Now, man was already considered a guru. And if you will, he will give you a Ford car. Now, this is before independence, when cars were really scarce compared. And a Ford car all the way from America. Well, you had only the richest people in India could afford to have such a car. And he will give the money to pay for the gas for the rest of your life. Now think how much money that entailed. That tells you how much this crook had gotten out of those poor, simple indigenous people. So anyway, Professor Devadi's father blew up, told him off, and said, "Go back and tell your lying fake of a not guru that he can't buy his way in to me. I'm a Brahmin." And so away he went. But isn't it interesting how all these threads come together sometimes and you learn all these facts about people? So that's the real story of uh, the 12-year-old guru. Okay. And here was the pitch: you need knowledge. And we have the knowledge, like capital T, capital K, you see. You need the knowledge. Now, they only had one guru, so he had to have a lot of henchmen to go around and teach. And for some reason, they were called Dadajis, and means uncle. That's kind of sweet, isn't it? So the Dadaji would come and initiate you into the knowledge. You almost expected that some kind of chimes or trumpets will go off before they say the knowledge. They had it all down the way they said it. I can pretty well approximate. So the way they threw their weight around, it didn't matter what. If anybody said they were a yogi and knew anything, they'd say, "Have you received the knowledge?" And it was sort of like, "Do you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior?" It was that kind of thing. So the Dadajis, of course, they were real bullies, let me tell you. And so people were given the knowledge. So those that were foolish enough to think knowledge would do it, well, they flocked. They made a lot of money. Of course, it all blew apart and it all evaporated at the end of the yoga boom. But they and these Ananda Margis at the time, they were operating in this way. Yes. So there were the sadhus and the Dadajis, and it was all interchanged who was what. But seekers of knowledge. But Krishna, all right, and he's implying, you see, now, then the seekers of wealth, the seekers of prosperity, prosperity consciousness, prosperity affirmation, my God. Uh, a couple of our sadhus went to Tiruvannamalai and found one of the biggest crooks among these prosperity people holding forth, and Westerners flocking to hear them. Whereas anyone who had any kind of inkling of the teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi would think that such a thing was just garbage. But so it went. So the seekers of knowledge, the seekers of wealth, and then the last, the wise. The wise who know because it's wisdom. The wise who, if they were told, you'll lose all your money and you'll lose your health, and nobody will like you, and you'll die all alone and in misery and suffering, but you will know the self. They would say, "Okay, I'm ready for it. I'll just do my best to hang on." That's what the wise say. The wise say, "Don't bother me with those kind of things. I don't care about the steak knives." Remember the TV ads about it? Then you get these steak knives if you order. If you order within the next 20 hours, you'll get this. Bargainers, not just with God, bargainers with their own soul, their own spirit self. Imagine. Okay. So, of them the wise man ever united, yukta. In other words, this means he's focused, he's intent on the one thing real. In other words, we talk about, well, I'm locked in on it. Well, the wise man is locked in on it, devoted to the one. In other words, meaning I'll give my life to that. There's nothing I won't give, there's no effort I won't expend for that. That's what devotion is, not like, oh, sweet Lord Krishna. Not in the least. In fact, avoid those people. Wait till you find out what they're really like once they're off the stage. All right. Of them, the wise man, ever united, devoted to the one, is preeminent. Frankly, he's the only one worth being on the stage. Exceedingly dear am I to the man of wisdom. Literally, he values it. It isn't sort of like, well, we're all here and we have to evolve beyond duality. So let's get better. And their Brahman is kind of a thing. But the real yogi, the intelligent one, the word's priya. He's dear to me. He's precious to me. And we can't engage in a personal relationship with Brahman in like, oh, I'm your little child or this or that. But you can say that reality is dear to me, desired by me, and willed by me to be attained. All these indeed are exalted. In other words, there are again the virtuous and so on. But I see the man of wisdom as my very self already, because we are this self already, and we are the inner essence of Brahman. But but we know it now. At least we know it intellectually. He, with mind steadfast, abides in me the supreme goal. In other words, we fix our aspiration on that supreme one. And already then we live in it. He says that he's the goal, but says such a person is living in him. And that's right. It's like water. The fish swim in water. If you tell them about water, they say, water, what's this water you're talking about? I don't see this water. And they don't, do they? So this is just some kind of myth. What are you trying to sell me? Water, and that I couldn't live without the water. Naturally. So this is a great dilemma we had. Therefore, only the wise one really understands what ought to be done and gets busy and learns the way to do it, because it isn't just as we feel or as we intuit. Definitely not. So our previous one was half time over, and ours, we are less than a minute to our time. Therefore, namaste, namaste. We will continue this next time.